Hiya, and welcome back to One Last Night. The game that teaches us... The game that teaches us to respect your elders. That's all I can come up with. Let's just hop right in. Stretching my arms into the air, I listened to the whisper of the wind as it brushed against the nylon fabric surrounding me. It was a pleasant sound, one I'd heard every night I'd camped upon the cliff face. There was a comfort in the familiarity to it. However, there was a lack of warmth next to me that I'd felt the previous 2 nights. Xavier had already left the tent. We stayed out on the edge for a while last night, watching the sun finally set. Once it had, the two of us made our way back to the makeshift camp where Xavier called it a night. I offered to prepare some food to take to him before he slept, but he brushed me off as he went to rest. I couldn't really blame him either. None of this would be easy to take in all at once. It must seem like never-ending bad news. All I really can do is be there for him. Offer him support when he needs it and give him space to process things. Maybe he'll write in the journal I gave him to help clear his mind like I do. Going through my morning ritual, I picked up the pace a bit so as to check on Xavier sooner. I can't say I'm not worried about the kid. Grabbing my spear, I step out of the tent and glance around the campsite. I half expected to find the bat resting on the ledge, but he isn't anywhere in my eye line. My heart sank a bit at the idea that maybe he'd left to go on his own. I understood the appeal of journeying by yourself, but I thought he enjoyed my company. I know I certainly enjoyed his. He's a good companion. I took another look around the area, trying to see if I'd missed something. There. At the edge of the clearing was Xavier's quiver. I rushed over to it, thoughts flooding my mind as I scanned the area for more details. Had something happened to him? There didn't seem to be any signs of a struggle or anything out of place from the night prior besides this. He wouldn't have left something this important behind if he had left on his own. It still carried the weight of all of his belongings. Someone could have gotten the jump on him, knocking him out with something to take him away. I've heard stories about bandits doing that before, but I assumed they were just rumors they spread themselves in order to build up their reputation. They left behind Xavier's belongings to make him easier to transport if that were the case. I could tell my mind was already running unnecessarily rampant over situations like that. I'd calm down. A simple breathing exercise would work best here. I closed my eyes as I repeated the action, muttering what I was doing as I went. In through the nose, out through the mouth. After a few moments, I'd managed to successfully compose myself so I could think properly. I opened my eyes and... What are you doing? Ah! I looked up to see that he was hanging upside down from a tree, the look of confusion on his face shifting to a smile. Easy there, old man. Don't want you to break a hip. The bat sat upward from the branch. Slowly, I guess. I don't know. Like, here I was thinking that he just decided to take a dirt nap and jumped off the cliff. Here I was thinking that. Turns out he was just casually hanging upside down on a fucking tree. Like, the bat sat upward from the branch his legs were curled around, shifting his weight to hop off of it to the ground. Upon landing, he walked over and reached a hand out to me, which I graciously took, getting myself back onto my feet. You okay, Dorian? You seemed panic a moment ago. I brushed the dust off my pants as I looked at him. I'm fine. I was just worried about where you went. Why? Well, I saw your stuff sitting there and I thought something might have happened to you. A blush creeped onto Xavier's cheeks at that. Oh. I appreciate it, but you don't need to worry about that. I'm not planning to go anywhere without you yet. My heart fluttered momentarily at the notion that he'd stick by my side. It was a nice reassurance to know I'd have a friend around for a while. At the moment, though, I was so curious about something. That's good to hear, but I'm a bit confused. Why were you hanging upside down from a tree? Doesn't that perpetuate the stereotype? I guess so, yeah. For me, though, I do it because it helps me think. After everything recently, I needed it. It was barely noticeable, but I caught sight as his shoulders sagged ever so slightly before correcting themselves. I've had enough time to think about it for now, though. I'd rather get a start on the day ahead. Crouching over, he picked up his quiver and started to move towards the campsite. As the bat tried to walk past me, I put a hand on his shoulder to stop him. You know you're not alone here. It's okay to let yourself feel over this. I'm here for you if you need to talk about it. Xavier released a shuddering sigh at my words and brought his gaze to mine. I know, Dorian. I know. Not right now, though. Not here. We can talk when we get to Haven, okay? I'd rather do it somewhere where I can feel properly safe. And out in the woods with that tent as our shelter doesn't really match that requirement. I gave him a smile and nodded, taking my hand off of him. Alright, whenever you're ready. In the meantime, though, mind making us some breakfast? The grin returned to his face as he went off to tackle the task at hand. I glanced at the sky. Seeing the longer dawn was still present, we'd reach Haven by tomorrow morning at our current pace. As an idea began to form in my head on a way to take Xavier's mind off current events, I figured it wouldn't hurt to take a little more time to get there. So I turned back towards the woods and started my search. I finished scooping dirt onto the ashes of the fire as Xavier walked towards me, the tent packed up and being carried under his arm. He spoke up as he attached it to the bottom of my pack. That should be everything, right? We're all good to head out now? Not quite, there's something I wanted to do first. What's that? The bat fumbled the branch as I tossed it to him. Your first fencing lesson. Xavier blinked, confused. Really? Right now? Why not just wait until tomorrow at Haven? Because as I've said, you never know what might happen. Plus, with that first Morse code lesson under our belts, I need to even the mentor playing field. The bat rolled his eyes at that. A smirk on his face as he slid his quiver off to the ground. We need training music. We need training music here, and I think I have the perfect song for that. It's somewhere around here. I know that's what I'm getting at. Oh, fuck it. There we go. Music. There we go. There we go, there was the music. The bat rolled his eyes at that, a smirk on his face as he slid his quiver off to the ground. Alright, again with the movie stereotypes. It never hurts to be cautious. Doesn't that mean you always need to seek out how life imitates art, old man? That's actually where I got the file. Like, I went into the socially awkward video game files and just did that. I just played the Cats on Mars music. I absolutely do. How else am I going to establish myself as the main character? Xavier laughed at my retort. Whoever said you are a protagonist? Yeah, I tried to. I think I might have, skipped over it. Oh, wait. You've played it already? Yeah, I have. I have played Socially Awkward. I love it. Still have to get through Rask's route. I haven't played the game in a while. Like a month or two. So sad that it's on hiatus. So sad. Why wouldn't I be? Because it'd make a much more appealing lead. Oh, really? Absolutely. Seeing as I'm learning most of the things about this world all at once, it would make sense for it to follow my perspective. The viewer learns along with me as we go, which makes it easier for them to relate to me. I'm also single, meaning there's more opportunities for romance to brew with me. I'm the total main character package. I can see why you'd be appealing for sure, but it's a trope that gets used so often that some would find it refreshing to have someone more experienced at the helm. I have my own goal established already that is sure to get people interested, and having you around lets me explain things to the audience. I'm handsome, cunning, brave, the 3 traits people love to see in any hero. Oh, so you're a hero now? Always have been, kid. Then what does that make me? Isn't it obvious? My sidekick. Ah! You wish, old man. Care to prove me wrong, then? I hoisted my own branch in the direction of the bat, shifting into a ready stance. I'd love to. He raises his own stick to me in response. On guard! I moved forward, clashing the tip of my replacement blade with Xavier's. I knocked it out of the way with ease and put the end towards his chest. Really gave me a run for my money there, huh? His grin broadened at my gloating. I'm just warming up. He lifted the branch into the same position once more, and I did the same. On guard! The two of us continued our practice for another 20 minutes or so, the sounds of our clashing branches and shuffling feet encompassing the clearing. While he tried his best to score a point against me, I watched his performance and called out tips as we went. Sure, it might have been better to explain the basics to him, for lack of a better term, right off the bat, but I was curious to see how he could adapt to the fencing on his own. Considering he came close to scoring against me a few times in the process, he was a faster learner than I'd expected. I felt an odd sense of pride bubbling up in my chest over it. Maybe there really was something to all this mentor business the movies like to hype up so much. Our breathing was a bit labored from the exercise, so I lowered my stick and stood up straight. I think that's enough training like this for the moment. Good work, kid. Thanks, Dorian. He reached into his pack to get a bottle of water, and I did the same, stretching out my muscles in the process while he sat. I was happier now more than ever that I'd taken the time for the last few years to start working out again like I had in high school. Not only had the exercise proven useful during the apocalypse, the mental clarity I felt both during and after was incredibly satisfying and proved useful in sorting my thoughts. The process had also proved to be a great stress reliever, especially when done with a friend. Focusing back on the situation at hand, I put the water back in my bag and walked over to Xavier to help him up. One final lesson before the road. Now that I've seen your natural skill level, I want to teach you a few basic things that'll help improve your ability. I get into the starting position and motion for Xavier to do the same. Your beginning stance is called on guard. You take your dominant arm and hold it outwards, leading with the corresponding leg. I take a step forward with my right leg and hold the tree branch out. Since you're left-handed, you'd extend your left leg and arm equipped with whatever weapon you'll have. Normally you would be using a fencing foil, but you'll likely have to adjust to other armaments. Xavier mimics my stance, mirroring me as best he can. Notice that I keep my knees bent above my toes. It'll help keep your movements sharp. I watch as he attempts to correct himself, the playful part of my brain kicking into high gear. If he wants to tease me about my love of media, I know exactly the scene to recreate here. I walk over to the bat and without a word, press my back to his and hold him tight as he suddenly tenses. What are you helping? Just relax. God. I adapt myself to the curve of his body, making adjustments to the way he's positioned as I hear his breathing quicken. My hands caress his forearms as I bring his elbows into the crooks of mine while working around the wing, gently moving them in a way that will help his pose. Simultaneously, my knees are adjusting his to make sure they align properly with his toes. I can tell Xavier enjoys the touch, clearly needing contact after so long alone. The rapid beat of his heart gives it away as it thrums against my chest. The warmth of our bodies so close, I slide my hands down his sides to fix his posture, lingering at his hips as we stand there. Satisfied, I step back from the bat with a smug smile, knowing that my teasing went perfectly. I can see the red in his cheeks from here. The tease was also not without purpose either, as his stance is as perfect as I'd ever seen from a beginner. Point Dorian. There you go. That's how you should be starting off. How does that feel? Like you're a teasing asshole. Xavier mutters his response low enough that I can't quite catch it. What was that? I said it feels more natural. I'm not entirely convinced that's what he said, but I'll let it slide for the time being. Next we'll cover the advance. Do I need you to feel me up for this part too? I laugh at the snark. Don't worry, I've had my fun for the time being. Now you start with your foot forward and then move with your back one. Make sure your heel lands first, not your toes. I take up on guard once more and display the advance, extending the tree branch forward. Then do the opposite with the retreat. Back leg, then front leg. I follow my own instructions to finish the example, gesturing for Xavier to follow suit. His first attempt is somewhat wobbly, but after a few tries he gets the hang of it. Excellent! Lastly, we'll cover the lunge. To actually get your foil to your opponent, this is the move you'll need. You want to kick your front leg forwards and push off with your back one. I demonstrate the action for him. You'll have to find the movement that suits you best for this the more you practice. Some prefer to kick their hind leg higher for more airtime, while others go further forward. It all depends on the person. I watch as he follows my instruction, testing out a few different styles before finding the one that he seems to enjoy. That should cover the basics for the movement. Think you'll be ready for our next bout? A smile crosses Xavier's face as we put the sticks down to grab our bags. You don't know what hit you, old man. We share a final laugh as we glance at the campsite for anything we might have left behind. Xavier's eyes lingering towards the cliff before he shakes his head as if to snap himself out of it. The bat speaks up as I turn to leave. No goodbyes this time, Dorian? No need. I've visited this site many times before. I don't need to bid it farewell again. Wow. Who knew an old dog could learn new tricks? I gave him a shove and laughed as we turned down the trail opposite the one we came, ready to finish our trek into the city. It wouldn't be a long journey until we made it to the suburbs, bringing what I'd consider the first half of our journey to a close. I took a few moments before a conversation would be struck up to review the schedule for today. It was fairly simple. Make our way out of the woods, journey through the suburbs, give Xavier a lesson on scavenging, and walk a bit more before calling it a night. Taking a glance at the sky above, we seemed to be right on track, if not a bit ahead of schedule. Haven was only a day away. I couldn't help but wonder how everyone was faring there in the weeks I'd been gone. It may not have been the longest time, but life had a way of changing things in an instant. Someone had likely been selected to fill my position on the council to help keep things running smoothly, but who could it have been? I knew a few had their eyes on the job even before I'd left. Whoever it was certainly deserved the chance at helping everyone. Maybe Thea or Olivier had finally stepped up. The twins were incredible at what they did, and neither was more than worthy in my eyes. The German shepherds were a main asset in keeping the camp clothed and armed, being both prodigies in their respective fields of blacksmithing for the former and fashion for the latter. Hell, if both ended up on there, then the camp wouldn't know what hit them. I smiled at the fond memories I'd had with the two, my mind branching out and recalling all the good times I've had there, the countless lives I've saved. I think it'd be good to be back, at least for a little while. Xavier would be able to make some more friends and have a safe place as well. I'd have to leave eventually, though, depending on how urgent the news they had for me was. Part of me wanted to leave Xavier there, to give him a chance to relax. The other part knew how valuable to a friend he was to me, and wanted him by my side. In the end, the decision would be completely up to him, stay at Haven or accompany me on my journey. That choice was his and his alone. After 2 days together, I felt like I understood relatively how the bat worked. I was sure he'd stay with me, especially after his comment this morning. Yet the sliver of doubt that he wouldn't made me realize I didn't know all too much about him. If we parted, there were so many questions I wouldn't get to ask. This time I broke the silence between us first to start up a conversation to get to know him better. So, what's up? Nice weather we're having, huh? He shot me a glare as I mocked him for how we started our talk yesterday. Is this you trying to score more points over me, or did you actually want to talk? Why not both? The bat rolled his eyes. Good luck with that, old man. I don't need luck if I'm a natural. Naturally balding, maybe. What was that? So what's on your mind? Little prick. I was hoping to get to know you better, actually. I spent a while talking about me yesterday, but I'm curious to hear more about my favorite bunker bat boy. Aren't I your only bunker bat boy? Wow, that's a mouthful. Bunker bat boys are bear rarity but blink and... Bunker bat boys bear rarity but blink or babble amusedly and you'll be behind. What? Hang on.
Self-voicing enabled. Dorian, bunker bat boys bear rarity but blink or babble amusedly and you'll be behind.
Huh? You said it was a mouthful. I just wanted to make it an even bigger one. Another eye roll as I brought things back on track. My point being that I know there are a few sensitive areas, so I figured I'd let you guide your way through things. I'd love to, but I think it would help to have a more specific guideline than just you. Yo. I'm also like taking a look at the network shit. And yeah. It's going. I took a moment to recall my personal guide on getting to know someone. I'd had to do it plenty in the last year, so I'd grown accustomed to it. Internet friends in the bunker were things I knew I was better off avoiding for the moment, but I could touch on his personal details. How about hobbies? Everyone seems to have a few of those lying around. Well, I spent a lot of time studying and learning, honestly. There's all kinds of things you can read about. It's how I learned Morse code in the first place. I've read a lot about history, seeing how those ancient civilizations evolved into modern society. Evolution in particular always caught my eye. Why would some species adapt to walk upright and speak all kinds of languages, while others seem to stay stagnant in the process? There's all sorts of theories regarding it, an unfortunate few mentioning eugenics. But tying it into history, there's even more interesting aspects. Ancient ruins had drawings of the process that made people walk upright. It's possible they knew how we started, but since we can't properly decipher their languages, the origins are lost to time. Even still, that which has survived and been decoded could be chalked up to just nonsense due to lack of technology. Then if you put different religions into play, you get countless new perspectives. Every idea comes from somewhere, right? Who knows the sorts of things that were lost due to the centuries that have passed? We're currently living in an event that will be considered a huge part of history. Our names could be passed down for generations. Do you think that's a good thing? Why wouldn't it be? You just said our names could be passed down, meaning that everything we do in the moment has a significant weight to it. Our stories could be told, but who's to say ours will be on the right side of history? I think it would be hard to be on the wrong side if we're just trying to survive. Besides, the same could be said before all this happened. We always bear the burden of history that future generations will come to learn. If we worry too much about what will be, we'll lose sight of the things we have now. I nodded to Xavier's point. Even if the talk so far hadn't been much about him, I was already beginning to understand him better. He may have been a bit dense socially, but when it came to other things, he was well of knowledge. Nicely put, kid. Thank you. Other than that sort of stuff, though, most obviously I took up archery. What about it drew your interest? Honestly, not much at first. My parents told me I had to choose some method of defense in my early teens. Most of it was close combat stuff, but I preferred to learn something that wouldn't cover me in bruises. Hence, archery. But why make you learn one at all? Most parents would rather have their kid take up a sport with a ball. Wish I knew. They never really explained it to me. Just like that, I was left with more questions about the bat's history. At least it came in handy. If I can ask, were they the end is nigh type of people? Not that I saw. They're the overprotective kind, but I don't think they're the doomsday prep type. Then why do they have a bunker? For storage. He told me it came with the house as an added feature. I was still suspicious, but I sensed pressing him any further would make things uncomfortable. While on the topic, what part of the city did you live in? We lived on the outskirts, past the suburbs. You know those scattered houses you see when driving out of town? That was us. I visited the city every so often with my parents, but for the most part, I was just out there with not many people to talk to. Must have been tough. I lived my whole life in the more urban areas, so I'd grown used to always being around people, even if I preferred to be on my own at times. That's one of the reasons I enjoyed Haven. Having people around me again was incredible. I never really imagined my future to be as a leader or mentor, but here we are. Life just sets you on a different path sometimes. Did you have a dream job beforehand? I was still trying to figure myself out. Everyone expects you to have your entire life planned out by the time you're leaving high school. If things were that simple, I'm sure less people would be in debt with degrees they never wanted. How about you? A pilot. Really? Absolutely. I spent so much time on the internet just looking at so many different landscapes and cities, I wanted to travel to see them all. Being a pilot would also let me take people with that wanderlust to set destinations. So it's a win-win. I studied everything I could online about flying. Manuals, airplane schematics, wind patterns, and so much more. I even had a flight simulator installed just so I could practice. I smiled at the bat, both from the confidence and joy in his voice and the humor of a bat who can't fly normally, taking to the skies in a different way. It was also symbolic in a sense, that sheltered childhood leading to a craving of freedom and exploration, something that could be found in pilotry. Sounds like a perfect job for you, kid. Thanks, I thought so too. We'd both been so distracted in conversation, neither of us had noticed the path coming to an end nearby. We're here. There was a shift in the atmosphere as Xavier prepared himself to see the suburbs up close, the anxiety building up. I considered suggesting we take a moment if he needed, but Xavier's gaze was firmly set forward as we strode towards the ruins. The houses were what first popped into view, windows shattered and lawns overgrown. A few of the roofs had caved, sunlight streaming down upon whatever lay within. The greenery on the lawns had spread viciously, creeping up along the walls and streetlights, pushing its way out from wherever it could. The pavement in particular thrived in, lurking out of the many cracks scattered underfoot as if desperate to reach the sun. Cars had begun rusting from where they lay in driveways, some lucky to remain intact compared to others. The unlucky had crashed into each other or whatever unfortunate object stood in their way, ash still charring their hoods. Had it not been for the thriving flora, the scene was overall miserable. It was hard to stare at the remnants of what was once your present, now cast away to the past. Xavier kept a neutral face on, observing it all. It definitely wasn't easy, but he seemed to be taking it in stride. So which way are we headed? I jerked my head to the right. The base is up north. Trust me when I say you'll know when you see it. Let's go then, old man. No time like the present and all that. Xavier strode forward confidently, wasting no time moving ahead. I picked up a light jog to catch up with him. I admire the enthusiasm, kid, but we need to be cautious. The outskirts may be safer, but it's still dangerous out here. All the more reason to reach Haven faster. If we rush and make mistakes, though, it'll only cause more trouble than it's worth. I continued before the bat could interject. We'll get there in due time, Xavier. Impatience will only be our downfall. For the moment, just take everything in as we go, alright? He looked as if he was about to try and rebuke that, but paused and took a deep breath instead. You're right. Patience is a virtue, as they say. I nudged him in the shoulder. Look at you, you're starting to sound like me. I was wondering why I felt extra wrinkly this morning. Ha ha, very funny. We continued our banter as we walked further into the suburbs and away from the trails where our journey started. The more distance we put between ourselves and the outskirts, the less overgrown things became. Although the pavement was still riddled with cracks, it was somewhat easier to walk on. Our conversation had died down a while ago as we took in the sights. It never got easier to know these were the same streets we'd walked before. What was once vibrant with society, the sounds of cars driving, children laughing as they played, people chatting as they walked, was now unbearable silence. The absence of city noise was eerie, the whistle of the wind blowing through hollow shells of homes taking up its place. We were starting to merge closer to the urban areas as shopping centers and apartment buildings began to pop up more frequently. In particular, there were a few storefronts nearby. A convenience store, a nail salon, some kind of law office, and an antique shop were all lined up in a row. The rest of the shops had been crushed by falling apartment buildings, but the separated parking garage that once accompanied it seemed mostly intact. It was exactly the area I'd intended to bring us for our next pit stop. Okay, kid, let's pause for a moment. The bat had seemingly zoned out as he snapped to attention at my words, taking a few moments to process them and respond. Bat give out on you already? Following his lead from prior conversations, I continued as though he never said anything. This seems like a good Good area to start our final stop before Haven. What are we doing now? Another lesson. What do you see around us? Xavier took a moment to look around. Ruined buildings, like all the others we've passed. And why would we stop in this area specifically? I could practically hear the gears in his head turning. Oh. Oh! I know! Say it then. We're here to get our nails done. Exactly! Wait, what? Yas Queen slay. They've got to have polish at the salon, and we can loot it for some of the colors. I used to practice on myself when I was home alone sometimes with my mom's supplies. That way, when I had a friend to do it with, I'd be ready. Now I think a nice light blue like periwinkle would match the red of your flannel. Meanwhile, a royal purple would work best for me. You're joking, right? Of course I am. Okay, good. You had Obviously, I'd go with pink, just like my scarf. I've always wanted to bond with someone like this, and we can still treat it as a lesson if you want. He was so close to connecting the dots, yet had fallen so far from the purpose of the question, it was almost impressive. How could Xavier be so smart and mature at times, yet so dense when it came to seeing the point? And no, Xavier, you were on the right track, though. Oh. Then why? We're here to scavenge. While we can get supplies for Haven, this will serve as a good teaching moment. It'll help in the future. Like on supply runs, for example. Dorian. Let's just give him this. It's obvious that it's very obvious that he needs a proper distraction from this. It'll help in the future, like on supply runs, for example. Not letting the opportunity escape him, Xavier brought his gaze to mine. So we can still get nail polish? I sighed. If they have any leftover bottles, sure. Sweet. Teach me the ways of the scavenger then, mentor. He gave me an overly exaggerated bow to accentuate his point. We'll start in the most obvious place to look for resources, the convenience store. By now, though, it'll most likely have been thoroughly looted. Still, it never hurts to check because if we do find something there, it would make things awfully convenient. I enjoyed the unamused groan I got in response to my pun as we approached the store. Oh. The pavement underfoot began to crumble as we stepped on the shattered remains of the big windows. I got a better look as we entered and saw that the inside had been pretty much what I was expecting. All freezer doors had been smashed and left more glass amongst the debris on the ground. The shelves were toppled and bearing nothing but empty bags. Empty food bags, lottery tickets, receipt papers, and other miscellaneous garbage was strewn about. I call this a lesson because in the end it's more like common sense. I can provide a few tips, but you should always rely on your instincts. For example, it's better that we leave no stone unturned. It's possible a can might have rolled under a shelf or over behind some pieces of broken ceiling tile. Got it. With the bare minimum said, the two of us began our search of the store. Xavier started by the shelves, checking to make sure everything there was truly empty. I went behind the counter, brushing aside the lottery tickets and empty cigarette packs that covered the area. Were things really this cheap? I peeked my head up, confused by the bat's statement. What do you mean? It's just that the prices seem lower than I remember from when I accompanied my parents to go shopping. I moved from my position and over to where my companion is to see what prices he's looking at. Sure enough, the cost is what you'd usually find in this type of place, slightly more expensive than a normal store so they can turn a profit. I'm not sure where you were taken to shop, but it must have been some kind of scam place. These are the prices you'll find at most corner stores. Regular ones may have them even cheaper. Huh. I guess my life may have been a bit more pampered than I realized. I continued to search as we talked. What did your parents do for a living then? They always said they were janitors. Hate to break it to you, kid, but no janitorial job pays well enough for that. They either lied about their work or they had some other side business going. They might have even invested some in the stock market or something. That tended to fluctuate a lot, though. And I'm sure there would have been a lot more yelling over lost money if that was the case. Besides, that's not a thing you'd really be ashamed of. Unless they had invested in cryptocurrency or NFTs. If the apocalypse hadn't ended things, the environmental damage from those sure would have. We both gave a chuckle as our search of the store came to a close. We even checked the back, and as most clerks would say, there was nothing extra in stock back there. The other three stores yielded similar results. I was lucky to find a mostly undamaged notebook in the law office, and Xavier found a few different polishes at the salon. I'd been hoping to find something cool at the antique store, but half of it was also crushed by the building, and the front only offered some broken lamps. It's too bad about this place. What once stored antiques has now become an antique itself. Xavier snorted. Really? That's your thought process? What's so wrong with it? Oh, nothing, nothing. I just didn't realize you had a side job as a poet. I don't. Wisdom, however, comes with my role as mentor. Alright, then what wise words do you have about our journey so far? Let us follow this tale as it begins to unfold, lest it be lost to time and memories. Where'd you steal that line from? I came up with it myself. The unamused look on his face meant he clearly didn't believe me. Okay, fine, it was part of the opening to some fantasy game I played a while back. No idea why that part specifically stuck with me, but it did. It certainly came in handy here. This does seem like the introduction to a story. Now who's the one seeing a narrative in life? Still you. If you're not indulged, I'm sure you'll get cranky. I rolled my eyes at the bat. Back to my original point, though, I was almost hoping to find a typewriter here. I've always wanted one. Since I can't type online anymore, it would have been a good substitute. Think there's a chance we'll find one out here? If we can survive the end of the world, what's to say a simple old machine can't too? Fair enough, so what's next? I don't think we'll be able to do anything with those other stores. There's still one place of interest we haven't checked. I hooked my thumb to the right in the direction of the parking garage and started walking. Why there? While most people focus on the stores, they often overlook cars. There's more to be found in them than you'd initially think. Like what? From personal experiences, I found some good blankets and pillows, a few backpacks, and a variety of self-defense items from pocket knives to pepper spray. As morbid as it is, it can also be fun to try and piece together what kind of person drove that car. What someone has in their car can tell a lot about them. Did you have a car? I did. It was a nice sedan. What did you have in it? We don't need to discuss that. Sensing he'd struck gold, Xavier intensified his stare as a smile widened. What was in your car, Dorian? What are you hiding? Oh, look, we're here! We weren't, but I sped up to get closer and avoid any embarrassment. I wasn't sure if I even had anything in it that was damning. I just wanted to avoid giving the bat further ammunition. As we approached, I saw the ground ahead of us slanting downwards. The entrance to the garage was underground, which was far less than ideal. I was tempted to turn back and avoid getting trapped inside or finding it in a closed space, should the situation come to that, but I knew this provided a good distraction for Xavier. Everything came with a little risk nowadays anyhow. If we managed to find some good supplies too, it'd be for the best. We'll stick to the lowest 3 floors. That way, should something happen, we can manage a quick escape or at least make it outside to a better fighting ground. Then, should we start at the 3rd and make our way down? Let us know any alternate escape routes. Now you're thinking, kid. Taking a scan at surface level, I analyzed the environment and listened intently for any potential signs of danger. The light in the sky illuminated the streets as it began to take on hues of sunset, providing me with enough of a view to see we were in the clear for the moment. Keep your weapon out just in case we encounter something inside. My companion and I entered the structure, me raising my spear as he drew his bow and knocked an arrow from his quiver. Slowly but surely, we made our way up to the 3rd floor as we watched and were luckily met with no threats. A fair amount of cars were scattered amongst the garage, leaving me with hope that we'd be able to find some goodies amongst them. Xavier and I approached the nearest one so I could teach him some amateur breaking and entering. Okay, kid, first step is to scout out your quarry. Look through the windows and try to see if there's anything of value inside. Of course, things might not be visible at first glance, but it's worth the effort as it can also tell you whether someone has ransacked it for themselves. Looking into the automobile in front of us, there didn't seem to be anything special about the interior at first. On a scale of 1 to 10, my friends, we're fucked. The floor was littered with trash, the owner having likely been someone who only drove themselves around. Looking closer, under one of the various fast food wrappers looked to be a reusable water bottle. Xavier seemed to notice it at the same time as our eyes locked. How do we get in then? Well, it never hurts to try the door first. Very funny. As he said that, I grabbed the handle and pulled the door open with ease. Oh, you were serious. Pushing the trash out of the way, I grabbed the metal container and unscrewed the top. We both recoiled as the pungent odor from inside was released. Needs a good wash, but it seems to be usable otherwise. We began to push more trash aside and dug for any other trinkets while the musty smell of the car hung in the air. Now was the perfect time to start the game. What kind of person do you think owned this car? Someone horribly unorganized, that's for sure. But what else about them? Make a story out of it. That's the point of this game. Let's see. Xavier took a moment to examine the car for what little it was worth now. Definitely a guy owned this. Likely somebody with an office job. They got too busy to be able to cook at home properly while managing other life things like work in the gym. So they took to fast food instead as it was blatantly easier. Since they're the sole driver of the lazy mobile, they stopped caring about keeping it tidy and would just throw the packages in here. The car itself seems to be an older model and probably wasn't in the greatest condition even before the apocalypse. Compared to the others that were parked here, they believed they could get away with leaving it unlocked to make things easier on them. I nodded along to the tale my companion had woven. Not too shabby, kid. We'll make a storyteller out of you yet. I golf clapped for the bat as he gave me a shallow bow. Thank you, thank you. Too bad there was nothing else of use here. That's the way it'll be a lot of the time. There's still one part of it to check, though. The click of the trunk popping open as I pulled the required lever drew our attention back there. Xavier walked over and peered inside. Anything in there? Just a spare tire. He paused. And it's flat, too. This guy really needed to take better care of his things. I closed the door as Xavier simultaneously shut the trunk. That should cover your latest how-to lesson. Any questions? One big one comes to mind. How do I get in if the door isn't unlocked? You, my one-winged wonder, are in luck because I have the perfect and easy solution to that problem. I rooted around my bag for a moment before withdrawing a small pouch. Pouring a few of the ceramic shards into his hand, immediately his eyes lit up. Holy shit! You have ninja rocks? I take it you're familiar with them? Of course! I've seen tons of videos where they're used. I've always wanted to try one myself. Now you can. I don't have a lot, unfortunately, so use them only if you deem a car worthy. Will do. As the bat excitedly walked off to try a car by himself, I moved on to one of my own. The first one to catch my eye was a black hatchback situated near a corner of the lot, a chunk of cement denting its hood. Scanning the inside, I couldn't spot anything of interest, and, to my disappointment, the door was locked as usual. I could have given up and went to the next vehicle, but a gut feeling told me there was something here. And nothing can go wrong. Taking out the pouch from my pocket, I removed one of the ninja rocks from inside and tossed it at the driver's side window. When the hard porcelain made contact with the glass, it immediately shattered it, allowing me to use the hilt of my spear to clear the shards from it. I silently thanked Haven for introducing me to these little miracle workers. Breaking tempered glass was made so much easier now. Crushed from spark plugs, ninja rocks were small but sharp pieces of porcelain. In some places, they were even considered as burglary tools. I unlocked the door and began to root around inside, hoping my instincts were right once more. Sure enough, packed away into the glove compartment was a folded-up tarp. This would be incredibly useful for Haven and could be used for some good trades. Satisfied, I slid the item into my pack and tried my luck with the rest of the car. As I did so, I simultaneously tried to piece together the story of who owned the vehicle. Maybe it was a younger woman, early 20s or so, trying to make it on her own in the city. The car was a gift from her parents when she left home. She took up a job as a grocery delivery person due to the room in her trunk. It didn't pay too much, but she could still get by. She'd go on girls' weekends with her friends when she could, bringing the tarp along should things get too wet and wild. Convinced I nailed the story, I closed the car door and went to find Xavier to hear the tale he'd woven from his scavenging. I saw the bat standing next to a red sedan with its door open, his back to me. Hey kid, piece together the car's origin story yet? He remained silent and motionless as I approached. Xavier, you okay? Closing the distance between us, I took a look over the bat's shoulder to find his gaze concentrated on the item he was holding. A child's teddy bear. I recoiled internally for having called him kid moments earlier, as the harsh reality of the situation was setting in. Whoever owned this car in the past had a kid, and the likelihood of a child surviving this world was slim to none. I'd met many parents who had lost their children in the past year. All heavily mourned their losses, and some couldn't live on without them. It was a wish in life that a parent should never outlive their kid, but the cruelty of existence kept it as just that, A wish. I put a hand gently on Xavier's shoulder, snapping him out of his daze. You alright? I'm fine. I was just lost in thought for a moment. He brushed my hand off him and turned to face me. I could see his fur was a bit matted from tears. Are you sure? It's okay if you're... I said I'm fine. Let's just get this over with. The bat walked past me and in the direction of another car. I reached my hand out to call after him, but it was like my mind was drawing a blank. I slowly let it drift back down to my side as I watched him go. The barrel was still clutched in his hand. I propped my spear against the car and let out a sigh as I arched my back. The amount of times I'd had to bend over to root around was getting to me. Xavier and I had finally managed to work our way back to the first floor, looting as many cars as we could. The parking garage had turned out to be better than I'd expected. We found a half-used pack of matches, a multi-tool, some duct tape, and a huge stroke of luck in one car having several cans of food. A majority of the first floor vehicles turned out to be looted, bringing close to the task earlier than expected. The one I just finished had seemed promising, but produced nothing of value. I slammed the car door to go and find Xavier, whose mood had brightened a bit since earlier, but something seemed off. The noise from shutting it felt quieter than it should have been. I did a sweep of the garage, keeping an eye out for anything different from when we were down here earlier. A thought poked at the back of my mind, and I had the urge to test it. Picked up a piece of fallen concrete, tossing it to the ground in front of me to listen to its clatter. Once again, the sound was muffled. Fuck. This wasn't good. Over the past year, I'd heard stories of this sort of thing happening, though the last account had been so long ago I'd hoped it had vanished. There were too many stories of it, all so similar for me to pass it off as an urban legend. What few had claimed to have seen it talked about its brutality, often leaving nobody alive in the process. I'd written down the common themes about its traits in my journal. I began to walk as quickly as I could to this, using the size of my feet, a method that limited the noise made by your footsteps. I reached into my bag to pull out the journal, flipping through the pages as I had the day prior to find the entry. There. The silence. Rank S. Status unknown. Height approximately 10 feet when on all fours. Features: empty eye sockets, claws, fangs, rodent-like head, bony, near pitch black skin. Ability: drains all sound from the environment to heighten its own hearing. Range: currently unknown, theorized. Weaknesses: unknown. This was by far the deadliest fated to have appeared. Should it be one and the same? We had special lockdown procedures in case it reared its haunting head. What little renaissance that had accompanied the abandoned structure had been silenced, increasing my overall worries. The monster was closing in, and Xavier was completely unaware. Oh no, it all went wrong. I couldn't take the risk of calling his name, lest the creature hear it and come running. We had to be careful. Moving at such a fast pace in an awkward way was not easy on my feet, but I ignored the pain in favor of saving our lives. I rounded the ramp going to the next floor and narrowly avoided running straight into the bat. He opened his mouth to speak, but I clamped my hand around his muzzle, causing him to struggle momentarily in surprise. I held up the journal entry, his eyes drifting over and reading while the color drained from his face. We made eye contact again, and he nodded so I could let go of his snout. I gestured to my feet so he could see how I was walking and imitated, carefully moving towards the entrance. I looked behind to make sure Xavier was following suit. The stepping method was a bit awkward at first, but he soon got the hang of it as we continued forward. I silently moved around the wall to the exit ramp, holding my hand up behind me to stop my companion from going any further. I peeked my head out as to view the world above, watching carefully for any sign of the silence. I felt its footsteps moments before it came into view. Yo! That is some Aliens from a Quiet Place level bullshit. And that is just a giant, big ol' can of fuck that. Alright, my friends, time to just... Yeah. Large and lengthy, its pitch black skin was stretched over what the untrained eye would believe was a seemingly weak frame. Its ears twitched as the hollow sockets of its rodent skull stared into nothingness. Its mouth hung agape, something dripping off the fangs within as it seemed to be panting. What I had written from witnesses was accurate, but more terrifying in person than I ever could have imagined. I was grateful for the evening sky illuminating it as encountering this creature at night would have been fatal. In this range, I could barely hear my own heartbeat, the rest of the world utterly quiet. My breathing matched the fate its own as I turned my head slowly to look at Xavier. I silently mouthed my words to him. Whatever you do, don't make a sound. He nodded, but his face was framed with confusion. He gently imitated holding a pole, resulting in my own confusion, before he gave a slight thrust of it forward in a stabbing motion. Horror dawned on me as I realized what he was asking. In my haste of panic, I'd left my spear behind at the car. Xavier must have seen the terror in my eyes as he gripped his bow tighter and waited. Him having to be our sole fighter at the moment should have come to that. I cursed internally for letting myself make such a dumb mistake. What slim odds of survival we had were made even slimmer. I brought my eyes back to the silence and watched as it stood at the top of the ramp, listening. We held our position for several minutes, not daring for a second to try any further movement in case of the worst. My guess is, invisible noise. Like, you know how human beings cannot hear dog whistles? My guess is something either extremely high-pitched or extremely low-pitched. Like, I think it'll just release that, and just do it that way. It raised a paw, beginning to step in our direction. Whatever noise it has heard us make earlier, it must have decided it was enough to investigate. Before I could even signal Xavier, however, its head jerked upwards and my heart skipped a beat. Was our cover blown? Instead, it broke into a dash and bounded to the left and out of sight. That is a big ol' can of fuck this. The environment gradually gathered its ambience once more as the monster left, Xavier and I still too terrified to make a move. When I deemed it safe enough, I ran to grab my spear and met back up with the bat. We shared a look of understanding and carefully snuck our way up the ramp. There was no sign that the silence was here anymore. With a nod, we broke into a sprint and ran off into the distance, my eyes momentarily drifting to where it had stood. A small pool of blood sat on the ground, rippling from our movement. We weren't the first thing it had hunted that day. I don't know why it did that. Maybe the silence is intelligent. How about we call it here for now? After running for a long while, we'd slowed down to speed, walking in an attempt to put as much distance between us and the silence as possible. A fair amount of ground had been covered, so I was feeling a little better about stopping here, though the anxiety was ever present. The sun was nearly out of sight now, and what little rays remained would be useful in setting up the tent and fire. Where should we camp then? I don't feel comfortable doing it in the open or in any of these rickety houses. The bat had a point, but I was accustomed to the feeling. We can check the backyards. There should be one with a mostly intact fence. Xavier nodded and started off towards the nearest house without another word. Oh. We keep burning through these games like so quickly. I know, we just keep burning through them like so quickly. Don't worry about it. Things have been quiet since we left. Our focus on fleeing rather than conversation. Yet I couldn't help but feel there was some other tension residing there. He seemed almost distant now, and I wasn't entirely sure why. The most likely reason was everything from the past few days was finally taking its toll. After a few tries, we managed to find a suitable one and settled down. Night now in full effect just as we finished. As we sat around the flames, I pulled the faded guide from my backpack and handed it over to the bat. Here, you asked for this yesterday and after earlier. It's probably useful to give this a read now. I know. I saw, Soleo did release a new update, just not the Thai update. Just not an update to Ty's route. No new content other than the remade first day. Yeah. In other news, we did actually get the release date for the next Heart of Amethyst update. October 28th, I believe. Thanks, Dorian. He took the journal and stared at it for a few moments, fingers tracing the edges like he was lost in thought. He shook himself out of it and began flipping through the pages as I stared at the fire, the heat providing some sliver of comfort. I'd hoped it would start up a conversation, but the bat read silently in the firelight. My thoughts began to drift as the lack of talking left me with nothing to do but think. We had passed so many buildings today, walking along streets that had been on a year prior. The scenery is full of echoes of the past, and it was as if they came crawling to life as the memories flooded my brain. Countless days wandering as I craved a way to escape my busy life as a youth. Step after step of trying to kill time while I waited for the love of my life to come home from work. Strolling right alongside him, drawing from the endless well of comfort that came with just being around him and wondering how I'd gotten so lucky to find him. It's a fickle thing, trying to find that sense of belonging each of us yearn for so desperately. You have it sometimes and you feel relaxed, until it's gone and you're left reflecting on it all. Each street... Go add it to the pole. Each street post and lawn ornament may have been something to glance past once, but each held significance to what would now be considered my old life. They reminded me of the past I wished could be my present and future, the emotional surges of my memories holding both good and bad times alike. There was so much I regretted having never done when I had the chance, opportunities lost and paths never taken. You never truly realize the things in life you take for granted until you find everything you've ever known stripped from you. It really makes you think about what you have now in the moment. Have you truly lived your best life if you find yourself full of so many regrets? I ask the question under my breath, exhaling it with a fraction of the worries that like to run rampant in my head. I don't know. I startled from my stupor, not realizing Xavier had heard my pondering. I went to explain myself, but he continued his train of thought instead. It depends a lot on the person, I think. Some prefer to coast by taking whatever is easiest for them and allowing the grievances to brush past. They focus on letting things go and moving on, almost like they're afraid of conflict and the real world. He sighs before speaking again. And then there's others, those in life who want to do more, want to be more, who feel trapped. They struggle and fight to forge a path in life that they want, oftentimes suffering because of it. All they want to do is be themselves, but sometimes they may be so blind to their own reality and not see it for what it truly is. A prison. Almost like those old stories of an heir in a tower. They only know what they're told and live peacefully in said tower, and as it's the one life they know. They foolishly trust the people keeping them there because why wouldn't they? They haven't done anything to purposefully hurt them, at least that they know of. But cracks form, gaps in trust. Slowly but surely, that window keeping them in the world separate begins to resemble a spider web. And when the day comes that the glass shatters, does everything up until that point count as their best life? Or does their life truly begin from that moment forward? Unlike the air, we don't often have someone to rescue us and change our fate. We have to do that ourselves. It's not as easy to escape on our own. You may even succeed only to have the world bite you just for trying to be yourself. And what the fuck is so wrong with just being you? Who are others to say it's not okay to be who you are just because it's not their own life? That's why it makes everything else so much more difficult. If the world rejects you, why not just run back to that safety net of the false reality you were given? That can only last so long, though. That trust is already broken, and despite how much you try and pretend that's fixed, despite not even addressing the issue, it all becomes a ticking clock. It counts down the minutes left until you don't even know you have until the rug is ripped out from under you and you're sent falling into the darkness. You're left alone and scared and confused and trying so desperately to figure out what the fuck happened and where it all went wrong. Wondering if this was all your fault. If you deserve to be trapped like this. The silence slowly drives you mad as time passes. And all you can do is wait until one day the world becomes loud again. Xavier pauses, taking a moment to wipe the tears from his eyes. We can't know whether we live our best lives because no matter what, there will always be regrets over our actions. The life we have now is the only one we've got, so we shouldn't focus too hard on the past despite the pain that may lie there. We should focus on bettering our future by improving our present. Xavier was trying his best to keep his face neutral and attempt at holding back further tears and averting meeting my gaze. I didn't know much about his past, but it was clear the speech wasn't just his opinion. He had been talking about himself. There was so much of Xavier I didn't know, putting in perspective just how little time we'd actually spent together. Whatever traumas he'd faced, the impact of the world at large was causing all the emotions he'd hidden away to bubble up again. I couldn't stand seeing my friend like this, so clearly in pain. I know he wanted to talk it out properly at Haven, but he needed a release right now. Gently, I got up from my seat and stepped towards the bat, wrapping him in a tight hug as his facade crumbled further. You are who you are, and that's okay. Everything will be okay. And the dam burst as the tears began to flow once more, Xavier clutching at me as he sobbed into my chest. We sat there, holding each other under the starry night as the bat let out all the negativity that had built up inside. Whatever it was that his past held, I'd find out in due time. Everything would be answered eventually, but right now, I wasn't the one in need. Xavier was. And what he needed was a friend. I'm gonna save here real quick. The flames had died down significantly over the past few hours as I poked them in an effort to pass the time. Xavier and I had sat quietly there for a while, my arm wrapped around his shoulder as he let himself feel everything he'd pushed down. Eventually, I told him to get some rest while I took a watch so he could sleep more peacefully. He was reluctant at first, but eventually went along with it after some convincing. It was better that at least one of us slept tonight. Sure, I did think the kid needed some time to doze in order to slow off so many emotional weight. At the same time, I was also sure he'd insist on staying up all night with me if he knew that's what I was doing. After the encounter with the silence earlier, I tried to brush away the thoughts of it, but in reality, my mind had started racing the more I tried to avoid the topic. I'd come so close to dying yet again and had made another stupid mistake. It was a blessing that thing didn't come after us. We probably would have both been toast otherwise. How had I survived this long if I kept fucking up like that? Was that just lucky the whole time? Or was I... No. I needed to stop this train of thought and not wallow my idiocy any further. There were more pressing concerns at the moment. For example, just because we'd run away doesn't mean it had left the area. The monster could still be lurking somewhere close by. The fire might call attention to other things that lurked in the shadows, but I'd rather take my chance with them. The crackle would provide notice should it draw near. Another point in my favor was the clear sky overhead, the moon particularly bright for whatever reason. It provided much needed light on the world below. The backyard had an almost ghostly glow to it from the moonlight, meaning I'd be able to see should anything disturb us. Speaking of disturbing sights, my mind was brought back to when we fled earlier and I glanced back. Whose blood was that? There was every possibility it was a random stranger, but the thought was still unnerving that someone had been so close and we had no clue. Could we have helped them? I doubted it. We'd never know now anyway. The chance lost to the past. We couldn't have even known whether they were an ally or an enemy. That thought alone unsettled me even more. What if they were from Haven? They had lost that polar bear earlier to send me a message, and if they'd lost another one so soon, that would affect whatever morale they'd mustered. This could all be discussed further when we arrived. For now, I just had to keep watch. If I get too distracted, who knows what might sneak up on me. Dorian? Like that. I bit my lip to keep from crying out, releasing a startled and pained grunt instead. For the third time today, the bat had startled me. Xavier, I swear I'll put a bell on you if you keep startling me like that. I'm not interested in indulging your fetishes at the moment, young old man. I look up to the bat, happy to see a small smile on his face. That release from earlier must have done its work. Are you sure? I promise I won't bite too hard. I don't have a thing for dentures either. Sorry. We let out a small laugh as we talked quietly to each other. That previous light-hearted atmosphere returning with a warm welcome. I slid the pocket watch out and checked it, surprised to see that even if I had intended to wake him up, he was early. What are you doing up anyhow? I've still got at least an hour left on my shift. I couldn't actually sleep. I've just been tossing and turning for a while now. You wanted to come keep me company then? It beats sitting alone, doesn't it? Fair enough. I patted the ground next to me as the bat took his seat there. I could take over if you wanted to give it a try. I shook my head in response. I'll pass. I was actually intending to let you sleep the night. You didn't have to do that. It would have been fine taking a watch. I'm sure you would have too, but you needed it more than me. Besides, I have too much on my mind right now, and it seems you do too. You could say that again. I'm sure you wouldn't The The bad joke was cut off by a shove from my companion, a smile on his face. Very funny. What should we do then? We could just talk as we've been doing. I guess, but I think I'd feel better on the move. You said we aren't too far from Haven earlier. We should be close, but it'll be more difficult to traverse with the darkness. Seems like the moonlight will help significantly with that. I took a moment to ponder it. Honestly, I'd rather put more distance between us and the creature than sit here. I stood up, brushing off the dirt from my pants. Let's get going then. Used to the ritual by now, we quickly gathered our things and exited the backyard to the nighttime streets. With the moon so vibrant tonight, it made it easier for us to see where we were going and not trip as we navigated to the nearest intersection. Having lived in a city, you get used to the ever-present light pollution invading the sky from the buildings below. So when all that light suddenly vanishes, your nights are suddenly a lot darker than you're accustomed to. The shadow is vast and ominous. I was a lot more appreciative of the moon ever since, and I hoped that somewhere out there, Marshall was staring up at it with me. I never realized just how littered the sky is with stars. I glanced at the bat who was gazing upward with me. Beautiful, isn't it? Absolutely. I looked to the nearby street sign to realize we were closer to our destination than I thought. I picked up the pace slightly as I continued my hushed conversation with Xavier. You ever wondered just what might be out there, so far above us? You mean other than planets and stars? Yeah, it's possible life exists out there considering how vast it is. Think we'll ever encounter it? Perhaps one day, if we haven't already. Oh, please don't tell me you're one of those aliens walk among us type. He said it. He said it. Beep, 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 beep. Beep, beep, beep. Bum, bum. Beep, 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 beep. Beep, 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 beep. Of course not, but there are plenty of probes that have been sent into deep space. We could have made contact without realizing if one of them was faulty. And for the sake of your entertainment, sure. Maybe a wolf will fly down from space and take me to be his husband. I see what else here. What else here? Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. Hang on. Hang on. Hang on. Hang on. Hang on. Just bring him over. Hang on, hang on. You gotta do the thing. There we go. He might be on his way for you right now. Luckily for me, I have my own earthen wolf to keep me grounded. We continued to trek forward in a comfortable silence, me softly humming a song I used to frequently listen to while Xavier hummed his own tune. The noise would be a simple yet effective way to tell if the silence neared again now that the conversation was absent. In the distance, the vague outline of our destination rested on the horizon above the houses. I tapped Xavier on the shoulder and pointed in its direction. There it is. You know, you never told me where exactly Haven is. See for yourself. Turning the street corner, at the end of the block stood two massive wrought iron gates with stone walls lining either side. Beyond them were large structures of various sizes and, pushing them further back, an expansive grass with pavement interwoven amongst it. All this could only be seen as mostly silhouettes for the moment, meaning from here Xavier couldn't read the sign that labeled the place. A nagging feeling began to tug at my stomach as we advanced and the location came into proper view, allowing Xavier to piece things together. Haven is a university campus? Brilliant, right? Dorms to store the survivors, a mess hall for meals, auditoriums for meetings or to teach the surviving young. The wall surrounding it is perfect to keep us safe. Plus, it's full of textbooks to teach future generations. Your Morse code book can find a place amongst their ranks. Wow, points to them. Thank you. Wait, what? Who said you got any? You just did. I helped found Haven, remember? Did you suggest the campus? No, Raya did, but points to Raya then, not you. Who is Raya? Another co-founder. She and her wife basically run the place. We drawn appropriately close so that the sign out front finally becomes clear enough to read. Gallhaven University. Oh, so that's where the name came from. That was a point of inspiration for it, yes. I stopped suddenly, my mind finally putting together what was wrong. Noticing this, Xavier turned. Dorian, what's wrong? There's no light. As I stared into the campus, I saw there wasn't a single light source to be found. Well, it was pretty late. Aren't you sure they aren't just asleep? I'm sure, since we started taking refuge here, they always had at least 2 guards by the front with torches. There's a single reason as to why they'd break their protocol like this. Haven is in lockdown. Said protocol brought everyone to the basements across the various buildings and was only initiated when a truly malicious enemy was near. My fears from earlier resurfaced, Xavier's train of thought seeming to follow mine. Lockdown from who? Or worse, from what? I don't know. Could it be the silence? It's not outside the realm of possibilities, that's for sure. My mind drifted back to the pool of blood from earlier. Had it attacked here already? No, the blood would have dried to its skin by the time it got to us. The lockdown had to have been more recent than that. I began humming again, slightly louder than before to test the volume. The sound hadn't dulled, meaning we were still safe. Stay close. We need to get to safety. I began to follow the perimeter of the campus, continuing my song as we went. Why aren't we just scaling the wall or the front gate? It seems quicker and easier. During procedures like this, Haven keeps a back door in case any scouting parties return while it's commenced. On the off chance something made it on the premises, it'll be safer for us this way. Let's hope they left it unlocked then. We crept along the large stone wall, struggling to see much of anything due to the elongated shadows they produced. If one thing were to go as planned today, for the love of God, let it be this one. Our soft hums were gentle in the air as our final stop neared. How do we get in? I doubt there's a proper door. An underground passageway. The founders of this place, the Gallhaven family from which it was named, created tunnels during the Prohibition era to smuggle substances into their home on the estate. I pointed towards a statue in the distance, a stone carving of the Fennec founder. Just below there. Welp. We're fucked. Suddenly, something metallic hit the ground in front of us. A small metal canister was rolling our way. What the? Took a step backwards from the cylinder, but I was too late. A loud hissing noise filling the air. I didn't know what was happening, but I hoped if I ran with the bat, we could still get away. I turned, prepared to sprint, and was greeted by the sight of 2 individuals. A human standing next to their lying companion. He was holding an increasingly limp Xavier, a cloth pressed to his face. Gripping my spear, I began to raise the weapon before I felt fabric covering my face as well. I struggled against the grip of my attacker as best I could. Whoever he was bigger and stronger than me. I was growing dizzier by the second the longer the rag was held there. Shoving the hilt of my spear backwards, I heard a satisfying grunt of impact as the grip loosened. I stepped forward and stumbled, my vision swimming as I fell to my knees. I couldn't let myself go down here, not now. All I could do was manage a glimpse upward at the tree. The third member who had held me a polar bear. As a human woman stepped forward with a grin plastered on her face. You're quite the fighter. The boss is absolutely going to love you. There was excitement on her tone as I felt a kick to my side, sending me sprawling to the ground. My gaze drifted to the statue, a hand outstretched towards it. We'd come so close. With the last moments of my consciousness, a single word came to mind on what had transpired as I was unwillingly dragged into slumber. Bandits. Yep. To be continued. As of now, that is the shortest read-through. But of course the game could be relatively new. Anyways, now it's time for everyone's favorite game. I know, and it's so good. So good. Now it's time for Now it's time for everyone's favorite game. Let's vote on the new game that we're going to play. Or read through, or whatever. In one last night so far. Okay. What all should we put in the third and fourth choice? Uh, No More Future. Hmm. I'm gonna look that one up real quick. I'll just go ahead and add Violet Memoir to that. Undefeated. Wait, is that like the full title? Like Undefeated VN. Is this the one? Hmm. Alright. Well, I will throw that onto the list. Anyways, and fuck. Yep, I forgot to change the time. You're just gonna... Yeah, I know, I completely forgot. Which one did we put on here? No More Future. And then lastly is Undefeated. For the next 20 hours, it will be up. Anyways, not much else can be said, so stay safe, have a good night, and I will see you all tomorrow.